Sometimes when we have the privilege of coming to our partner churches, depending on who comes with us, I hear testimonies as Nikki shared and hear beautiful songs of worship, and then hear Justin share or others speak, and I feel like there's nothing left for me to do. And today would be not a whole lot different that way. The Lord certainly has been working in their lives and through their lives, I hope, anyway, to bring encouragement and hope to each of you here today and each of us here today. But I do want to share a little bit out of, I mentioned 2 Corinthians chapter 5. As I awakened this morning and was talking to the folks that were staying with us in our home, I had mentioned that one of the things I asked them to do was to spend some time over this next few days or week or so writing down what it means to be a safe person. What it means to be a safe person. I know you have a note sheet. We're going to look at some of that, probably not get through it all because of time, but I would encourage you all to think about that. As an ambassador, what does it mean to be a safe person? What do you think people expect to get when they talk to you, when they approach you, when they reach out to you, when they present their dilemma to you? We have a pastor at our church. He's been there about 8 or 9 years now. And we've been there 27 years, my wife and I. But he's been there about 8 or 9 years. I've known him for a long time. And when he came, he asked myself and a few others to sit and develop a reading that we wanted to present to people, to say, this is what we are known by. This is what we want to be known by. If people hear about my home church, what do they want to know we are? And so he did some looking into some successful business owners, how they run business, how they do things that draw people. And he came across Walt Disney. Most of you would know that Disney and Walt Disney. And Walt Disney said the one thing that he wanted Disney World and Disneyland to be known for, not that people would have fun, but that people would feel safe when they came there. And I thought that was very good. And so we talked about how we wanted our home church to be a place, firstly, of safety. Certainly, we want it to be a place where the gospel is known and shared and ministered out. But we want it to be a place where people know they can come without judgment, condemnation. Sounds very simple on paper, but it doesn't always happen in churches and in Christian gatherings. 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 16. Paul says this, therefore, from now on, we recognize no one by the flesh. Can we see an individual as a person created by the same God who made us? I would have thought that the God that made the people in the church I walked into was different. I was raised in church as well. But I wasn't sure that the one who made me, who was all screwed up on drugs heavily for 15 out of 20 years, was made by the same God. And I know a lot of times when I meet with folks, they tell me that, whether it's their perception or whether it's actually happening, that when they approach someone for help, they are looked at as different, and they can tell that. Goes on to say, realize that they have the same right to the grace and love of the Lord that we have. Verse 17, therefore, if anyone is in Christ, this person is a new creation. I heard a man at a church down our way last summer. He was speaking. And he said something that I hadn't thought about. This verse here was presented to me very early on and really was part of what the Lord used to change my life. A man from Ireland was here, Tom Eakins. He's spoken here before. Some of you may remember him. He's not able to travel because of health right now. But he said to me, if anybody is in Christ, he's a new creation. I said, do you mean to tell me that God actually sees me as a different person than I was the day before he came into my life? And he said, he does. You're a new creation. Well, this man I heard last summer said, not only have I been moved, we saw the slide earlier, not only have I been moved from condemnation and eternity apart from God, in the orphanage, if you will, I've been moved into the adoptive home when I became saved, when I became a Christian. But this man said last year, he said, but our minds should be thinking differently too, that we no longer see the individual that's in our lives as somebody who was without hope and without help. I know it must be difficult. I don't have children. I've never lived with a child or a spouse who has been addicted. I was that person. I was that child, that son, and I was that husband for the first 6 years of our marriage that was just wrecking the home. I mean, wrecking it. I don't know what it's like to be on the other side. But I've met now over the 20 plus years I've been working with Stauros with a lot of families, and they shared with me from their hearts that it is greatly difficult, yet all they really want to know if there is hope. If there is hope. If there is hope for this person in their home, in their church, in their workplace, wherever it might be, to be different. And a lot of our time is spent encouraging families to stay and pray, as Nikki mentioned, for 20 years. My mother prayed for me 20 years. I wonder, would I give up after 5, after 10, after 15, after 20? And I'm grateful she didn't, and others didn't give up. So we're new in Christ, not just we're now saved and we're going to be with him for eternity, but our thinking should be different. The way we see people. All these things are from God who reconciled us to himself through Christ. That's what Jesus came and did. He reconciled man to God. He's done that for us, for any of us here that are saved. He has done that and gave us the ministry of reconciliation. And Nikki kind of alluded to it a little bit, somewhat to that. I stand here and I'm not gifted in very many things. But what I know is that God has given me the opportunity to pass on what he gave me. And I pinch myself too, thinking, are you sure you picked the right person to try to do anything like this? Why don't you pick somebody that's an eloquent speaker, that's somebody that's charismatic, somebody who really knows how to draw people and all that sort of thing? But he's done that for each of us. He's called each of us who have become believers to be used by him in some way, shape, or form. And I know, obviously, every church has a multitude of places where we can do that. But I want to encourage us to be involved with that. It's not easy to reach out to whomever it might be and to serve him in the ways. So thankfully, we have ways provided for that. When we have people involved that are coming in with addictions and with difficulties and troubles, kind of as Nikki mentioned too, we need to let them sit for a while and grow and change in him. But in our minds, thinking, what would be a good thing for them to be involved with? He says, Paul says this, therefore we are ambassadors for Christ, as though God were making an appeal through us. Ambassadors for Christ, as though God were making an appeal through us. Just the last slide, Justin showed this earlier. I just want to keep this picture in there in our minds. That line with the arrow, that's Jesus walking someone from the orphanage to the adoptive home. We won't sing today, but there's a song that we would sing from time to time. And it says that the chasm was far too wide. I never thought I'd reach the other side. But your love never fails, which is the title of the song. That chasm is that arrow, that line. And Jesus comes into the orphanage, and he chooses the ones that he does, and he walks them into the adoptive home, which is hope of eternity with him. But as Justin mentioned, we're not there yet. So we are the body that folks are coming into. And I picture somebody sometimes standing at the door of the adoptive home, the embassy, who is a Christian. And they would stand there and grill someone as to what qualifies them to receive that which God is offering, which is salvation and grace through Jesus Christ. And a person not knowing. I know Alistair Begg has been in the news lately for some things, and I'll not get into that, but there's a video of his that I've mentioned before called The Man on the Middle Cross. If you get a chance to pull that up on YouTube, you should watch that. The Man on the Middle Cross by Alistair Begg. And he talks about the thief on the cross, and he says the thief on the cross, he says, if you know that story, he says to Jesus, to save me, essentially I'm paraphrasing, and Jesus said, today you'll be with me in paradise. And so the thief goes to the gates of heaven, if you will. And the angel's there, and he says, what qualifies you to be in here? Do you understand the doctrine of grace? And the thief says, I never heard of that. Do you go to Bible study? No, I've never been to one. Do you understand any of this stuff? He says, what qualifies you to come in? And the thief says, the man on the middle cross said I could. And that's a lasting thought, I hope, for us. When Jesus tells the person coming in towards the embassy into our lives that they can come, we're not the arbiters of whether they can or not. If he's invited them, we are simply his hands and feet to welcome them.